Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast. Today we're going to be giving some initial impressions on Star Wars Jedi Survivor. We're going to be discussing the disappointing launch of Xbox's Redfall with some impressions as well. And we're going to be ranking the games in the Zelda franchise with what we're calling the Tears of the Kingdom. I'm your host, Patrick. Joining me, as always, is my sweet dumpster boy, my co-host, I just want to sometimes turn around and give him a sweet spanking on his bottom. His name is Kamen Darty. Kamen, how are you, sir?
What's going on, buddy? I feel like
we haven't talked a lot.
I know it feels crazy. We're always doing STC together normally outside of this, and
I've been a bit MIA on that show.
Yeah, it's I think 3 straight weeks now we haven't had you.
Yeah, we're changing that. Although we haven't talked about what the plan is for the next episode, but I am back.
He is back.
I am back, baby. We have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in live as we record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so you're notified when we go live so you can be part of the conversation. Kamen, we just mentioned I've been missing. I've been a boy in the shadows of Save Trash Cinema for the last few episodes. What's been going on in the world of STC? What do you have for the folks at home this week? Tell us everything.
So on this week's episode, we actually had an audience submission, and we jumped forward in time to the year of 2002. I mean, most of our movies are always in like the 80s and early 90s. But no, we jumped to 2002 to cover the blood-soaked gore fest of Eli Roth's Cabin Fever. Okay. It actually ended up working out, I think, in our favor that you weren't there for that because I don't know if you've ever seen the film, but if you haven't,
I have not.
Yeah, definitely it's not a movie for you.
Great.
Very gory. Very, very gory. This is a great episode. We had on our friend Bennett. We had on our friend Jackie. That was actually her request. She has been waiting months to come on to do that episode, and we finally got around to it. And honestly, it was a great episode. We coined our own Urban Dictionary phrase, Patrick.
Ooh, mama.
Yep. So if you want to know what that is, if you want to know what our new Urban Dictionary phrase is that Patrick wasn't there for, well, you're just going to have to tune into this week's episode. It is currently live everywhere. If you're watching us live on Twitch or if you're streaming, you can just jump right on over to the feed. It's there.
Hell yeah, brother. Also, our other show, Spotlight TV, you might have noticed if you're a fan of that show, my phone is making noise against my will. If you're a fan of that show, you might have been like, hey, we haven't had an episode in a while. We're taking a break. A bit too much happening in the world. So covering Succession has been put on pause. We'll be back at a later date, but we're still going to give you Spotlight Games and Save Trash Cinema every week, other than the scheduled break that we should be talking about soon. But that's separate. That's not a hiatus. That's a vacation. Kamen, what do you say we jump into the show and talk a little bit about Jedi Survivor? Kamen,
I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
I'm excited. So I was out of town this weekend, and the whole time I had a great time with my wife and some friends, but I was like, the whole time I'm just thinking I could be in a galaxy far, far away as Cal Kestis right now. So I got home, played a little bit on Sunday, played a little bit yesterday, played a little bit today. I've put in maybe 4 hours so far.
Okay.
I'm on the first like big world. So I went through like all the tutorial stuff. And I'll tell you what, Kamen, do games just like not launch well anymore? Is that just like a thing that just can't happen? Are we past a point in which a game can launch not a fucking mess?
It's interesting. I actually read this article. I think it's very smart. I think it basically explained why games don't launch well on PC. And the reason being is when you're designing a game for consoles, you can design them for certain specs. But for PC, you can't really necessarily design them or optimize them for certain specs, because your average PC player has a very ranging array of components that they've used to build out their gaming PC, right? Some are going to have certain hard drives, some are going to have certain, whatever those fucking graphics cards are called. I don't fucking know. Something you do your taxes with and play on Excel with. I don't know. PCs are for nerds. But basically, the way it was explained was like, you can't really optimize that until like so what they said was, it was like a normal game when they're in development for PC is they'll bring in like an range of PCs of like different specs, and then they try to optimize them around that, right?
Sure.
However, you can't hit all of them. And so there's just going to be shit. And then the thing, consoles the same way, is like players are just going to do certain things certain ways and break games. And that's why patches come out and stuff like that. But I think in this situation, from what I've read, the game's just a mess everywhere.
The crazy thing is like that totally makes sense. Everything you said about the PC makes sense. It's a big thing to be building for with so many variables. I understand why, even like on the best rig, sometimes a game is going to not go well. But like the PlayStation 5, this game was specifically built for next gen, current gen at this point, hardware. There is not a PS4 version. There is not an Xbox One version of this game. And I'm like, at one point, I just can't, like, the square button does nothing. I can't attack.
No.
I had to start the game over. I had to completely close it out and come back. About 20 minutes later, no sound. Everything is gone. I can't hear music. I can't hear. And I'm like, maybe it's like an HDMI issue. So I press the PlayStation button and I hear the PlayStation sound come through. It's like, oh, okay. So it's not the PlayStation, it's the game. There's also this other thing where like, it only happened to me once, but I was reading online. Apparently this is a pretty common bug where this like halo effect happens around Cal and BD1, where like, it's almost like they're like not even glowing, but I don't know. It's like this weird thing. That one, it came and it went. But like, this game was delayed, and the original game came out and was famously a mess with bugs. So much so that it completely like was an anchor on or a weight on the launch of that game. And like to this day, several years later, we're still talking about how the game is amazing, but man, that launch was bad. I would have, if I could have bet on one thing, Kamen, it's that this game would not come out a buggy mess. And it's like in ways worse than than the launch of Fallen Order. And that is just unacceptable. Like, delay it more.
Yeah.
Because it's not, the craziest thing to me about it was listening to other people that have been playing the game and reviewing the game on like really souped up PCs and it not working well. It's like, that's just like, it's like a paradox in my brain. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, if a computer is so powerful and has the best of the line hardware, how is it performing worse in that than in something else? But it's like, it's a shame, because I think the game is amazing. And I feel like if, like, right now, we're going to get to it in a bit. I played about an hour of Redfall earlier, and like, and we'll share our opinions on that game. But when this podcast is over, I might play Redfall more instead of Jedi Survivor.
That's a bummer.
And that is a fucking bummer.
That is a fucking bummer, dude.
Because I can already tell there have been such market improvements in Jedi Survivor. The map already, like, I could see that being problematic at times, but like, there's like, you can tag certain areas of the map, and it's just, there's a lot more detail to it. There's a lot more, kind of a more kind of a descriptive legend, and like, it's kind of going the Resident Evil style where there's a lot of color in the map to be like, okay, this room has not been accessed yet. That like, so it seems like they really put in a lot of time to make the map better than the last game, because that, other than the bugs, was the biggest complaint of the last game. It's like, it was really hard to navigate. There's also like some Breath of the Wild style additions where you can, BD1 can be like a set of binoculars now, and you can mark areas, and it'll show up as like a point on your map. And it doesn't like give you the GTA style like yellow arrow pointing you there, at least not yet. I don't know that if that's something that's going to come in later, but like they seemed to put a lot of time into fixing what was one of the biggest qualms or the biggest complaints about this game. The combat feels great. Like at this point, if you haven't seen it in the trailers, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a spoiler, but there's like new stances. In the previous game, it was just one lightsaber or dual bladed, like Darth Maul. Now you can hold two. There's a few different stances that you can have, and I've played around with one of them, and it feels great. Like there are these things that are making the game feel fresh. Same thing that we had talked about with God of War Ragnarok. The amount of enemy variety has been really refreshing, because that was another thing with the original games. Like it felt like you just fought like frogs, stormtroopers, and like the occasional
those things that kicked you.
Yes, the things that kicked you.
Fuck those things, man.
Yeah. And this, I feel like I've already seen like 7 or 8 different enemy types, including a boss.
That's awesome.
Like a mini boss. So like that's great. It's like these things that seem to be really kind of taking the experience to the next level. You can customize Cal now. I found a fucking mullet for this guy.
Fuck yeah, brother.
For the first time, I think, ever in Star Wars, there are characters with Southern accents. There's like the redneck is alive in Star Wars, and I'm fucking thrilled about it.
Oh, thank God.
And
we're gonna have fucking space NASCAR.
You wouldn't like, I hope, you know what, actually, let me just show you really quick.
Please do.
My Cal has a mullet.
I'm rocking it. Happy about this.
I mean, look at that. Just look at that.
What a mullet on that boy.
Unbelievable. So like there are stuff that like I'm having fun with it, and the story seems interesting enough. I don't quite understand what's going on yet, but like I'm in. It's just such a bummer. And like they've already, unlike Redfall, which we're gonna get to, Respawn has come out and been like, hey, we're sorry. We fucked up. So like at least there's that. At least they're like, hey, we realize that we have disappointed a lot of people, and we're doing our best to acknowledge that. They've already released like 3 or 4 different patches. There's another one coming later this week. So like they are putting in the work, and they're being transparent about it, which is good. I just delay it another month, clean it up a little bit, and we're not having this conversation. We're having a conversation about the good shit about the game, which I think there is going to be so much of it.
Here's the thing, Patrick, that I think is at least like it makes me feel a little bit better, is like the game is fun if you remove the bugs from it.
Correct.
Like that's
without
really,
a doubt.
Like obviously bugs are shit, and there's just going to be some people out there who are going to be incredibly critical. Like when I played High on Life, like I had fun playing that game, but I got game crashing, game breaking bugs that would not let me proceed. Like those aren't okay, but like having like random shit like texture pop-ins and random, things, like I can look past a lot of that. And I mean, and this is also coming notoriously from the person who loves trash games. So I will overlook a lot of stuff as long as I'm having fun. Right. I will overlook that.
For sure.
But like that is like if the button doesn't work.
Right. It's like, what am I supposed to do?
Like
the most important thing of this game, which is attack, I couldn't do.
So and that's a game breaking. Yeah, that's a game breaking bug. That's an issue. This is a big problem.
And so all of that to say, if you're really excited for Jedi Survivor, give it a week or 2. And see, like, if you're between this and say another game, unless that game is Redfall, then get Jedi Survivor. If you don't have Game Pass, like there are things that you can do with your time while they kind of get their shit together, unless you can't wait. If you can't wait, I don't blame you. Like I don't want to be waiting, but beware, it is a bit of a mess. But I can say without a doubt, it is not as much of a mess as Redfall. Kamen, you've been playing a bit more than me. I played about an hour right before here. I pulled together some reviews. We've kind of stopped doing review roundups on this show, but I think pulling together some reviews for this game is going to spark a bigger conversation before we get into our Zelda rankings. So I want to turn it over to you and say, or ask rather, what is your thought so far of Redfall? How long have you been playing? Give me everything you got.
Yeah. So first things first, I have probably put in between 3.5 to 4 hours at this point. I've literally dedicated all free time I've had today, which is not very much, to try to get, mainly because the review score is so bad. And
so bad.
people are very angry about this game. So I was like, look, this is a very topical thing. I will try to do my best to play as much as I can. And so that's how much time I've played. I think the fundamental problem here is this game is not good. This isn't a situation of like, this game has really bad bugs and glitches and XYZ. It does. Fun
It does.
fact, it fucking does. There was a moment I'm literally looking at a tree in front of me. The texture is there, and then the texture just went away.
I've had
I've
so much texture pop in this
I've
game.
never okay, but that's not even texture pop in. That's like them removing the texture,
That's texture
which
removal.
which I've never seen ever. Have I ever seen shit like that? Where it's like a
Yeah.
lot of times it's like, oh, it's not loading in, so you walk into an area and shit looks janky, and then the textures pop in. You're like, okay, this was like I'm in an area, and then the textures get removed. The
Yeah.
problem is even without the texture removal, this game looks like it was made for the PlayStation 3. This
It
game
doesn't
looks
look
worse
good. Yeah.
than the original Dishonored.
Like, and it's such a shame because I like the artistic direction. I like
Yes, I
I
do too.
like
I
the
love the way they did
vibe
it.
it's bringing, but boy, it doesn't look great. And it's funny in terms of bugs, the biggest one I've had, granted, like I said, I've only played about an hour, but I finished the tutorial mission and it's like, congratulations, like, welcome to Redfall, blah, blah, blah. And there's this like thing on the right hand side of the screen that's like, go here to accept your first mission. And it's covering literally half the screen and it won't go away.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm running around, like I'm pressing buttons. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just gonna like I have to go through like a certain door or talk to somebody, it'll go away. 15 minutes later, it still has not gone away. And finally, I start holding like all of the buttons on the controller, and a reticle for the B button pops up, and it's like the spinning wheel. So it's like I was supposed to hold it. And so this could have gone away probably 15 minutes ago, but the display of the button wasn't showing. So I had no idea how to get rid of it until I just started randomly holding buttons. And it's like
So
those little things are already adding up, and I've only been playing for an hour.
yeah, so what I can tell you is like, and I want to put like graphics aside. The game's not fun.
Yeah. I'm
That's
not having
the
a great time so far.
that's the other problem. I've made it far enough in where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to do stuff, and I'm like, I, I don't even care. I don't care. It doesn't even. It bothers me that like the actual shooting mechanics feels better if you're no scoping everything. Like if you play it like an old school PC first person shooter like Doom,
Yeah.
just no scope feels better than like actually aiming down the sights, because especially when you're fighting vampires, they're so fast.
They're so fast.
There's no reason to even use a scope. So the thing is then all of a sudden you have to remove certain weapons from your arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
They also give you some pretty game breaking guns right off the bat.
The UV one, is that one of them for you?
So I haven't gotten a UV gun yet, but the stake launcher will like,
I picked one up, but I haven't used it yet.
yeah, it pretty much will like one shot kill an enemy, and you get a lot of stakes, and you're just like, all right, cool, which is like fine. Like if you want to make the game like easier, like that's cool, because like, and you kind of feel like they've baked in like knowing like, oh man, we fucked up
Yeah.
by putting these guns in, because like playing on normal difficulty, it's like 2 hits you're dead. So it's like they're kind of like, so they like artificially inflate the difficulty because they have guns that can break the game this badly, like so early on in, and it doesn't feel rewarding. I've already also unlocked all of my abilities in the first 3.5 hours.
Really? Wow.
So
Which
like,
character are you playing as?
so I'm playing as Dev.
Okay.
Which is, you know, I like his special powers are kind of cool. I don't know if I even particularly enjoyed this particular character. I do want to try out some of the other ones, but like this character I mean, I like his traversal mechanic where you can like
Okay.
throw a disc and like teleport.
Oh, cool.
And that can be kind of fun, but like I literally I've not used that in combat. I've literally only used that mechanic to just move across the map faster.
Interesting.
The world is empty and dead.
It is.
There was one cutscene. I had one cutscene.
Well, the cutscenes, they're doing that thing that like AA PS3 games would do, where it's like a moving static image.
Yeah, I've
And
only
I'm
had
like, why does this
one
game take so long?
I've had like one cutscene
Wow.
that it wasn't a static image cutscene, and it was me waking up after the first static image cutscene. And I'm sitting here. So the thing is like I'm looking at this being like, I'll give a lot of passes to certain games because I'm like, this is like a AA game, and like you give that a pass. This isn't a AA game. This has been pitched. It is being sold. That's the bigger issue. It's being sold as a AAA game. Now, if you have Game Pass, no big deal. But like, there's people out there who don't use Game Pass for whatever reason. They just will buy one game and that's their thing they do. And that's totally fine. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And you're charging $70 for a game that is fundamentally broken. It is poor design. When you mentioned the box thing that popped up, every time you do anything, you can be in the middle of combat. You just finished a mission in the middle of combat and you have to hold B to get the menu to go away and then get killed in the middle of it because you can't do anything. You can't see anything.
Right.
Like that's just bad game design. And we talked about where I think it was talking about Halo last week and was like, hey, like, these developers know what they're doing. Here's the thing. This development team has a much better track record than 343 who made Halo.
That's what's so bizarre to me about this is I feel like Arcane has never, in my experience, delivered less than like a 9 out of 10 game. We had Dishonored 1 and 2, Prey, and Deathloop a couple years ago or last year, whatever, 2 years ago. It doesn't matter. It's like their track record has been so clean.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how did this happen? It's so baffling to me because at first I opened it up because I want to pull in a second Jessica Condit from Engadget because I think she says she puts things in a way that I think is really interesting about this game. But this game, it at first seems to have that arcane look to it that is usually so kind of not iconic's not the word, but you look at an arcane game and you can say, oh, that's an arcane game.
Sure. Yeah.
In a good way, complimentary.
100%.
And so all these reviews are so, I mean, it's right now it's Metacritic is like a 58 or something. I haven't seen a review better than a 6 out of 10 or a 3 out of 5. And so I'm expecting this game to not be great. And I immediately get into like, ooh, cool. I'm already getting arcane vibes. And then 15 minutes in, I'm kind of finishing up the tutorial section and I'm like, this just doesn't seem fun to me. It doesn't like Arcane is usually so good about a game feeling good as well as looking good. Deathloop especially, like say what you will about the like idea of the game and maybe that like kind of faux choice they give you doesn't work for some people, but it feels fucking good to play. Like it's really smooth.
Here's the thing. I wasn't a fan of Deathloop, but Deathloop was fundamentally good. It was a great game. It just wasn't a game for me.
Right. This is just, I don't think it's a game for anybody because even an hour in, I'm like, this game just doesn't seem like it has fun in it.
I'm sitting here playing it and I'm like, I'm going to give it time. And I have seen people be like, it is more fun when you have people playing with you, but like, that's not what you should be doing. You shouldn't design a game that's like, it's more fun if you have people to play with. Like, no, that's not, unless you market the game as like, this is supposed to be a multiplayer game that you can play single player. It is not. In the way that they do multiplayer from what I was reading, I'm hoping we get to try this out soon, the two of us.
Yeah.
There's no drop in, drop out. You have to log out. There's also no campaign progression for whoever the other person is.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. So if I jumped into your game and we went past where I was in the story, like I get to replay all those missions again. Yeah. And the missions are pretty much just like, go here and look at this thing and pick this up and then come back. And it's like, and then I think the other thing too is, and this is coming from like the idea of like, this is an arcane game and it's sold as that, right? It's pitched as this is an arcane game. And it's like, you have options to be able to tackle whatever problem the way you see fit. That's kind of their whole MO, right?
Right.
The problem is the very first mission in the game that you get is that you have to infiltrate a firehouse. And they're like, you can, and they tell you right off the bat, you can go through the front door and fight a bunch of enemies. You can go through, you can lock pick your way in through a back door, or you can climb up and traverse up to the ceiling and then go down from the ceiling. So it's like, cool. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try out the ceiling method. So I go in, I have to kill 2 enemies, and I stealth kill them. I'm like, awesome. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this isn't a real spoil. It's the first mission of the game. They're like, you have to rescue survivors, and they're like, okay, we're not leaving here until you kill every single enemy.
And go turn the power on.
So it doesn't matter if you stealth your way through the ceiling and do as minimal damage as possible, which like Dishonored would be like, that's kind of the way we want you to do things. This game's like, they're like, no. You still have to kill them all. You just got here a different way than you would have. And honestly, you wasted more time doing it this way because you're going to have to go back outside and kill all those people. You should have just, so it's like, that's to me is just doesn't like that. It's diametrically opposed to what you're telling me is the crux of what we're supposed to be here doing.
Yeah.
And
Jessica from Engadget says, right now, Redfall makes sense as an early access game. It's a mess, but it's still largely playable. Its core loop is actually thrilling. I don't necessarily agree when all the mechanics line up correctly, but the details need attention. The early access process is a crucial tool for developers, especially when it comes to online experiences. And there are pipelines for works in progress on every major platform, including Xbox. Redfall feels like a work in progress, but in reality, Arcane and Xbox aren't pitching Redfall as an early access game. They're calling it a finished product and charging $70. And I think that's the real issue here, is that this game is not presenting as a finished game. There's so much already wrong with it. And it's like so many game-breaking bugs. I was reading about this thing earlier where there's like some mission where you need like a key to get in, and for a huge amount of players, the key just doesn't show up. You go into a co-op match and it does, but to your point, it only shows up if you're not the one hosting. So then they don't get credit for that. They would have to play the whole rest of the game in somebody else's game in co-op and not get the credit for it on their own game. So it's just, it's a mess.
You want to know my favorite game-breaking bug I've had? It's not even a game-breaking bug. It was a game progressing bug. So I'm outside of a safe house, the first safe house that you unlock in the game. Well, outside of the main hub of the fire station. I go to this house and I get attacked and immediately get killed. Like I just got like trounced by like 2 vampires, just absolutely fucked up. It spawned me inside of the safe house.
So it just progressed you further in the mission.
It just progressed me and being like, you unlock this safe house.
That's
like
hilarious.
Literally on the death screen, it was like, you unlock a safe house trophy. And I was like, or achievement. And I was like,
that's really funny.
It's happened twice now.
That's really funny.
And I'm like, I don't like, this doesn't phase me. Like if it would be like, now you can never get the safe house, that's a lot worse than what happened to me. But it is hysterical. And, you know, I think, Patrick, we kind of talked a little bit about this before, and I don't know, man. I just kind of feel like we're at a point now with Xbox that I have questions.
I have been on this show very quick to defend Microsoft and try to kind of put ease to a lot of your concerns about this acquisition and the way that kind of they've been going. It's been like, oh, it's just like they've made some mistakes, blah, blah, blah. But it's like at a certain point, you make enough missteps and that's just like your brand. And so I agree. Like Redfall was being advertised as like one of the tentpole releases of Xbox this year. And it was delayed multiple times. And now that it's out, it seems like it is an early access fucking thing that they're charging $70 for, that I'm sure they're going to support. And I'm sure there will be a day where this game works better than it does. But that's just a really shady business tactic, I think, or
Here.
business practice.
Let's do
in
a
my
quick
opinion.
let's do a quick role reversal. A lot of times you're the one asking me questions. Let me ask you some questions, Patrick.
Ask me some
I
questions.
want to know your opinion. So first, with Arcane being one of the most prestigious devs under Xbox's umbrella, how do you stomach losing years of their dev time to a game that launches in this state, especially a game that doesn't look like it's going to be fun?
My hope is that Arcane has multiple teams and that this wasn't the Deathloop team or the Prey team or whatever, that this was a project. Let's say it came down from the top. I don't know. But I'm hoping that this hasn't been their only focus. And I'm hoping that they're a big enough studio with enough teams that there is another kind of more traditional Arcane game in the works that we're going to get. If not, then that's really disappointing that this is all we're going to get from Arcane for a while, who at this point, when you compare PlayStation Studios to Xbox Studios, Arcane is one of those ones on the Xbox side that I think really adds some parity to the conversation. Because I think it's safe to say most people would agree PlayStation just has a lot more high quality studios than Microsoft does. The acquisition of Bethesda helped even it a little bit. And if the Activision buyout goes through as well, like it'll definitely be even more kind of aligned. But this is not good. This is a huge step back, I think, for the image of Arcane. It's giving me Cyberpunk vibes for CD Projekt Red.
All right, got another one for you. Does Game Pass give legs to games that flop from a review standpoint due to it being bundled into subscription service such as Game Pass?
Yes, and I think if Starfield busts too, I mean, that'll be a whole different issue for Xbox, but I think Game Pass is starting to have an image issue in that it's good enough for Game Pass. This is, as an Xbox owner who primarily prefers playing games on PlayStation, Xbox is just my Game Pass machine. And in the last 12 months, I have started and put down probably 30 games on Xbox. And I have started and finished maybe 5. And that's really not a good you're batting like 20%. That's quick math. It's probably very wrong that you could easily fix in the chat, but not a good track record.
All right, got another one. Does Redfall's terrible reviews and consequential lack of sales help bolster Microsoft's claim that they need Activision to survive in this video game market?
I mean, maybe Activision will bring in games that'll, like with Call of Duty and everything, the one thing that Call of Duty does is work. And with this, I don't know. I feel like Xbox needs some wins before they start being a really bad kind of view of the horizon for them. I mean, Microsoft has so much money. They can lose a lot before it starts becoming a problem, but they're a business. And if they continually start losing money, then things are going to start changing if that's the case.
All right, here's another one. Considering the Bethesda games launch in buggy messes and Redfall is getting absolutely blasted for their technical shortcomings, do you think they'll delay Starfield to avoid launching or to avoid essentially taking in the ire of both reviewers and customers?
Here's what I think. I think because it's supposed to come out in September, I believe. Its most recent delay was to September.
So I was reading, it's supposed to be an October, November release now.
Oh, we don't actually have a date for Starfield? I thought we did have a date.
The rumor around town is October, November.
Okay. If it's like a few months out and there is any chance that it is this bad, that it's Redfall bad, I think they will delay it again. I think if it's Jedi Survivor bad, but has the quality behind it like Jedi Survivor does, I don't think they'll delay it again. I think it'll be disappointing that it's buggy, but if the bugs, to your point earlier about Jedi Survivor, if the heart of the game is still fucking good and they know it's good, then I think they'll still launch it. Because here's the thing, like a company like Xbox has been doing this for a long time. Xbox knew Redfall wasn't going to be good. Like, but it's one of those things for Redfall to come out now and it be like this, they knew.
Mhm.
Arcane knew. Like they're all really smart people. They're smart enough to make a fucking video game like this big. They know what they have. It's probably very disappointing for them. It's probably very hard for them to listen to and read reviews of people just tearing it apart. That probably sucks for them, but they know it's not good. Like there's no way that they are kind of thinking like, man, we fucking did it. What do they mean this game sucks? Like they're smarter than that. And so I think it'll ultimately come down to, is the game actually good? And they're able to, I think, identify that. And so long-winded way of saying, if it's still fucking good, then no, I don't think they'll delay it again. But if the bugs will impact it that much, I do think it'll be delayed again. And maybe it comes out next year.
I have one last question. This is the biggest question. This is a tough pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people at the moment.
Okay.
If the Xbox Activision deal goes through, can we even trust that the games released aren't going to be rushed and broken disasters?
Until they prove us otherwise, no. I think because if you go back to all of the games that Xbox has released over the past couple years, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment are the only two that come to mind immediately as launching successfully and like without some sort of negative storyline attached to it. And though one was a shadow drop and the other one was like a really small indie type title. They have not launched a super successful AAA game in a long time. And so I think until they do it, I think it's totally fair for that to be the assumption, because that's been the norm now for a minute.
Yeah, I think, and it's something that we discussed off air. I had this analogy that basically was just like, it's like having the best sub shop that like runs, that's like you got the best subs that are inside of like your city. And then Subway shows up and it's like, our sales are declining, our subs suck. We're going to now buy this chain of really good subs, and then we're going to start selling our subs in there too.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you want that? Like, why would you want something that's struggling? Because like, and I guess then the question becomes, because I don't think, we look at all this stuff, right? I don't think you can say Microsoft struggles to make games because their developers struggle because they're not as good as Sony or Nintendo. That is a categorical lie.
Sure.
It's just, this is a great example. I think Redfall is a great example of like, we all know Deathloop was a game of the year contender. Dishonored a lot of times was in, the top of the list of people's
For
top
sure.
games. Prey, another one. All of their games have been at the very top of the list. Then we come back, we look at what we've got with this game, and it's like, it's the first game that's been released exclusively under the eye of Microsoft.
Right. From
So,
Bethesda.
From Bethesda. So why is that the case? Why is this game in this bad of shape? Like, why is that? Is
Yeah.
it because this game was supposed to be Dishonored, and then Microsoft came in and said, no, this needs to be games as a service? And then they had to just completely change the way that this game works, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see. I mean, it's not going to be from Waypoint, unfortunately, because Vice just announced they're laying off that entire team. But I'm hoping that someone like a Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, an investigative journalist in the games space, I hope that they can get to the bottom of this. And like, I feel like there is a story out there. I feel like there is some, like, what went wrong with Redfall, I feel like is going to be a think piece and like an investigative fucking like story that someone's going to release at some point, because I feel like there is something here that we don't know as consumers, which saying it like that makes me feel like I have a fucking tinfoil hat on. But for them to have such a clean and celebrated track record and then to do this, it's something just doesn't add up. It's really strange.
So
But
You know,
maybe, I mean, people
well,
misstep, but
I mean, here's the thing. Okay, the last two, and if we don't include Pentiment or don't include Hi-Fi Rush, because those games are very different than
much
what,
smaller scale.
yeah, much smaller scale, more akin to AA or Indie. So the last two big games that were released now have been Redfall and Halo Infinite. Halo
And
in
I just remembered Plague Tale, but that came out on other platforms too, didn't it?
Yeah, it came
Yeah.
out on another one. Yeah. So that's not included in this list. So the
Yeah.
last two would be Halo Infinite and Redfall. Redfall is a feels like a rushed and just it's just a shittily put together games as a service game to try to catch whatever they can off of it. And Halo Infinite plays like Far Cry in space.
With a bunch like its own, there's so many issues with that game too
Yeah.
that, yeah.
And so I'm sitting
I don't
here
know.
and I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking like I think a lot of this might be that and this is tinfoil hat too, might be coming down from the top.
Maybe, maybe. I'm so interested to see now what happens with Starfield, because if that ends up shitting the bed too, I don't know. We're gonna be having a lot different of a conversation.
Oh no.
Speaking of conversation, the chat's been popping off. We got John in the
Holy
chat.
shit.
John, I feel like you've not been here for weeks. I've missed you. I feel safe again to see you in the chat. We also got Babylon Drifter. When we were talking about Jedi Survivor, got Jedi Survivor the other day, but now I'm obsessed with Power Wash Simulator. So I haven't even played Jedi Survivor yet. What do you think about Power Wash? It's fucking good,
It's
right?
fucking amazing. It's one of the greatest games ever made, I think.
It's great. It's great. And then yeah, we're talking. John and Babylon are chatting in the they're chatting in the chat about crowdfunding, early access, all that stuff. Great conversation happening. Thanks for being here, folks. I want to talk about something good. I want to be positive. Kamen.
Let's be positive for once.
I want to talk about The Legend of Zelda. We're less right now, as of recording, we're 10 days away from The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Friend of the show, Nick, who might still be in the chat, I'm not sure. I saw him post in there earlier. Messaged me last week on Instagram, which you can too, Spotlight GameSpot on Instagram, with a topic suggestion, an idea that I loved. I thought, Nick, or I said, Nick, this is a great topic. We're doing it. We want to rank the Zelda games leading into Tears of the Kingdom coming out May 12th on the Nintendo Switch. However, I want to do it a little differently. Instead of just saying what's number 1, what's number 19, because we're talking about 19 games today. I have put together, I've seen, friend of the show, Evan Brando, used to do this all the time, not on stream, just he would put these lists together and post them, and the internet would go ablaze. Doing a little tiers ranking of the Zelda franchise. We're going to call this the tiers, Tiers of the Kingdom. What do you think about that, Kamen? What do you think about that?
You know what? Look at you go.
It's pretty good, right?
Look at you go, dude. That's great. I'm proud of you.
Pretty good. Hey, thanks. So let me make this just a tiny bit smaller, actually, so we can see. Can you actually see these games, though? How about... Is this better? I mean, this fucking ads. This website is trash, but we're going to make it work, Kamen.
Let's make it work.
So here's what I think we should do. I think so. We have S, A, B, C, and D tiers, and then the haven't played tiers, or the tier. So what I want to go through or do first is go through and identify the games that we have not played. If one of us has played it, we're going to rank it. If both of us haven't played it, we're not going to, unless y'all in the chat have and you want to put it in a tier. We can turn that over to you. So I'm going to start by saying I have not played Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Triforce Heroes, the original Four Swords. I played Four Swords Adventures and Oracle of Ages and Seasons. So I've played all the other Zelda games. Are there any on this list that you have not played?
Yes, I'm trying to remember which one it was. I've not played Minish Cap, but I know you have.
But I have. I'm actually currently playing it.
The only one on your haven't played that I have played is Oracle of Seasons.
Okay, so let's take Oracle of Seasons out. So these other 5 we have not played, so we will not rank them. But if you are in the chat and you have played them, feel free to let us know what tier you think they should go in, and we'll honor your truth. Guilty Remnant Smoker in the chat. Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer, featuring The Legend of Zelda. Is that on the list? It's the only one I've played. So it's not technically on the list. However, that fucking Link's crossbow training on the Wii, fucking what I do want to do a little honorable mentions, but we're only ranking the mainline Zelda games. But I mean, we all know that's S tier already. Crypt of the Necrodancer, The Legend of Zelda is S tier. So top of the list. So Kamen,
Yes.
what do you say we go chronologically and start placing them from the beginning to now?
Okay.
So if we're going chronologically, the first game ever released in the franchise was The Legend of Zelda on the NES.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that game?
So I'm like really torn. I ended up playing this much later in life, so I didn't have like the initial experience of like playing this game. I actually think I played it on the Wii Shop. That's how long it was.
Sure.
And it didn't click with me. I gave it a solid C.
You know, I was putting it up here just so like it could be visible away from the group, but I agree. I think this is a C tier game. And I think it's one of those things, if we played this when it very first came out, maybe we would have that like nostalgia driving it.
Exactly.
But it's one of those games that it doesn't quite hold up in the modern era unless you have that nostalgia. So I agree. Let's put that strongly in the C tier.
Mm-hmm.
Also, John in the chat, ads are S tier. I know I adjusted the screen a little bit to get the fucking, I don't even remember what it was, but you didn't pay to be on this podcast, so we're not featuring your shit. Terry, C feels right. Thank you, Terry. Next up would be Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Again, just putting it up here for now, and we can place it where we feel makes sense. But you've played Zelda 2, right?
It sucks.
It's not great, right? I feel like that maybe is D tier.
This is very much a D tier game. Like someone out there is going to be like, "That's just a lie." No, I'm not. The game's not good.
It's not good. It's not great.
So
there it is. John already on our side. D in the chat.
I know.
Thank you, John.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes the truth hurts, or sometimes the truth feels so good. Sweet Skeet D def. Thank you. I love it when we're all aligned. It makes me feel good. Next up would be The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo.
That shit is S tier, baby. That was my first Legend of Zelda game. That is just a great fucking game.
It's a really good video game. I personally, I think would put it in the A tier, but I understand.
I mean, I'm content with that going into. Look, I'm content with deferring. I feel like if like for me, it is definitely nostalgia. So
no, I get that. Let's do this. Let's put it in A for now. But if I get multiple S's from the chat, it's going up to S tier. How about that?
Okay.
Compromise.
Next
up, Four Swords on Game Boy Advance. So this is the first one where neither of us have played this. Mm-hmm. So let us know in the chat if you've played this, where you think this goes, because we've not played it. So we're not going to sit here and make it a fucking S tier when we've not played it. So that brings us to Link's Awakening. There's the Game Boy original release and then the Switch remake. I've played both, and I feel like I would start the bidding for Link's Awakening at C tier.
What?
No, I'm saying B tier. But
okay, because I'm definitely going. I have it on my list as an A tier.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the original, but man, the remake was
the Switch remake is really lovely.
So good. Just a charming game.
Yeah.
But I
agree.
Once again, I will defer. I'm content with your reasoning. If you were to put it in C, I would have pitched a fucking fit, though.
Classic. I feel like that's one of those games. If you've not played this on Switch, and if you've not fucked around much with like the old school Zelda the top down the top down kind of like screen to screen feel of a Zelda game, it does a really good job of putting it in like the modern era. So definitely, check that out. If you've not played it. After that came what some people in the chat have already messaged me to say should be S tier, the best Zelda game ever made. I don't share that opinion, but I do think it's a fucking great game, and that's the Ocarina of Time.
That's an S tier game, baby.
You think S tier?
That's an S tier game.
I personally would say A tier. However, one of the most influential games in the history of video games to like made the open world game kind of what it is in a lot of ways. The adventure, what it is in a lot of ways. So I will agree S tier for Ocarina, even though my personal list has it as a high A. John already in the chat, S tier for Ocarina, and Nick, he hasn't said it, but I know he's thinking S tier for Ocarina. So let's have the first S tier of the night go to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Terry hasn't played Ocarina. If you have a 3DS, the 3DS port is really good.
It is incredibly good.
It's really good. And also, if you don't have a 3DS, the Switch port, dog shit. In the Nintendo Online. However, if you have that little Nintendo 64 controller, feels a lot better.
It's so sad though, because the 3DS port is like why didn't you just port that over? That's a wonderful port.
I agree. Another really good 3DS port, Majora's Mask, which I am also saying S tier. Unequivocal S tier. Now, what I want to do as well, once we have a few in each of the once this is filled out, I do want to within the tiers rank them. So we're going to get there. But Majora's Mask, I think it's my second favorite of the Zelda games. I'm currently playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on the 3DS, but once I'm done with that, I'm going to replay Majora's Mask on the 3DS because it's such a good,
also incredible port.
It's really good port. The first time I ever played that game actually was an emulator on a Mac in like 2011-ish. That was a pretty good port too. I played it with an Xbox 360 controller. That was weird though. Next up, Oracle of Seasons, so you have played this one. I have not. So where do you think? So this one was on the DS, is that right? Or okay. Or no. This would have been Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. I can't remember all my handhelds at this point. Especially all the fucking Zelda games. Okay. I from what I remember, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was anything really too great. I put it a solid B.
Solid B. Okay.
Solid B. It's like there's so many really good Zelda games, and this one's a good Zelda game. It's just like when you compare it to some of the others that are about to pop up, I feel like it just gets outshined.
Sure, that makes sense. It's a game now that I'm hoping that they bring both of the Oracle games to the Switch because that's how I'm playing Minish Cap right now is on the Switch, the Game Boy Advance eShop, whatever the fuck it's called. And that feels great. But we're going to get to that in a minute. But next up, I mean, come on. What might end up being the best game on this entire list? The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. S tier, easy. What do you think, though?
I have it on as an A on mine, so I'll give it to you.
Well, I took your Link to the Past S tier down to the A. If you want to take Wind Waker down to the A, I'm gonna fight you on it, but I'm gonna
let Sweet Skeet take this one because I'm gonna break some hearts soon enough.
Okay. Oh, I know what you're gonna do, and it's gonna be great. Next up, so alongside Wind Waker was a little game called The Four Swords Adventures on the GameCube. Which did you play this one, Kamen?
I did, yeah.
I did too, and I thought this game was pretty lovely at the time. I've not revisited it since I was 12.
Yeah, I have the same feelings I do with the Oracle of Seasons. A lot of like the DS Game Boy Advance ones, I'm just like they're lovely, they're charming, but like they just didn't really hit as hard for me as like the console ones for some reason. Yeah. So like for me, I have it on my list as a B.
Okay. I would agree with B, I think. I think just because of the amount of Zelda games, like you could maybe make a case for C tier, but the interesting thing about the Four Swords Adventures was it felt like a handheld Zelda game on a console, which was cool. Like it felt like the first time we got, at the time, what felt like a AAA kind of game, but had that like handheld feel to it still, even though it was on the GameCube. So yeah, I remember really liking that one. So we're going to put that in the B tier for now. After that, as I've mentioned a couple times now, the game that I'm currently playing, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. I'm about halfway through this game. So it's one of those games where there's like 4 different dungeons essentially that are like elemental, and I've done 2 of them, so I assume that means I'm about halfway through the game, and I'm having a really lovely time. It's really simple, it's really easy. Like you can tell this is, if you know what you're doing, this is probably a game you can beat in like 4 or 5 hours, I would guess. I'm having a good time. I feel like this is probably high C, low B from where I am now. So since I'm not finished it, I'm gonna start at C. But if anyone in the chat has played Minish Cap and has like knows that it ends up being like incredible or whatever, let me know. Something that this game does cool that I've not seen in a Zelda game before, because there's always like the thing, right? Whatever it is. Twilight Princess, you're the wolf. Wind Waker, you're on the ocean. Minish Cap, you can get really small, like an ant. Which is there's some cool like puzzling and some cool exploration stuff that they're doing. I've just not gotten a lot of it yet, and I feel like as I get more of this, of being able to use this kind of, I guess, is that maybe that's the Minish Cap? I don't know. I haven't. It's not been clear yet what the Minish Cap is to me, but it's fun. So I'm that might end up locking it into the B tier. But right now I'm going to start at C. But like I said, let me know in the chat if you have some strong opinions. Otherwise, next up, I think this might be a controversial one. Kamen. Released after the Minish Cap was The Legend of Zelda, The Twilight Princess. Where does this fall for you?
So Twilight Princess for me is a solid B.
Okay.
Solid B.
For me, it's a pretty solid C. But it's like a high C. So I think B. So friend of the show, Terry, who I think is still in the chat right now, wrote in to Instagram saying this is S tier for him. And the Twilight Princess defenders are out there, and I get it. It just didn't work for me. And it's a game that I really hope comes back with a port on Switch, because I want to play it again and experience it again, because I feel like this is a game that might work more for me later in life. Like it might vibe with it more now, but I feel like B is maybe the move here. What was your experience with Twilight Princess? Did you really fuck with it at the time?
Oh yeah, no. That was like one of the first games I had on the Wii.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed it for what it was worth. I think that the game had a lot of flaws, but I think ultimately though it was still enjoyable, and I think it was a really interesting change of pace from like what we had been getting, because we got a lot of smaller titles, I think, in between Wind Waker. And it was like the first time that we have like a more quote unquote realistic looking Zelda, which I thought was cool. It didn't really do, because we had Wind Waker did like cartoony, and then we had, we've got Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and then that are like, oh, we're gonna be like dark and edgy, and I don't know. I think it's a nice time capsule for like what video games kind of were at the time.
Sure.
Of like, let's try to be a little bit more dark and brooding.
Yeah. And it was so interesting because next up on the list is Skyward, or no, well, there's a couple more that came out before Skyward Sword, but we haven't played them. But the Twilight Princess with that dark, and then like it was the same graphical style, but they tried to just like make it not dark for Skyward Sword, and it just like weirdly kind of there's a lot of kind of dissonance there.
This is gonna be the heartbreaker of the of the ones when I say that Skyward Sword is a solid D.
I would say it's a C for me. Like so this was my experience with Skyward Sword. Got it on the Switch when it first came out, played it for a little bit, and just like hit a wall. And I was like, this just is not fun. The flying is fucking wonky, and the Wii Motion Plus controller, like, sure, it makes like the sword feel better, but I feel like Zelda never really nailed the motion controller that it was trying to sell in the
See, I felt like it worked much better with Twilight Princess. Like, I felt like
Really?
Twilight Princess worked better. Skyward Sword, I feel like, kind of did away with some of the gimmicky aspects of it, but like was what I enjoyed the most about.
Well,
Twilight Princess.
Because with Twilight Princess, the gimmicky nature of it, because it couldn't be as accurate as they wanted it to be, they made it a little more arcadey, which was more fun. With Skyward Sword, you had to have Wii Motion Plus to play it, so like you had to sometimes do like diagonal chops, and it was like it just wasn't very fun. But then years and years later, I went back and I was like, you know what? I never played Skyward Sword to the end. I want to try it again. And I played it again, and I realized there was a very quick tutorial about how to fly that I just must not have read when I first played it. So I realized I had never been flying correctly the first time I played it. And it was all of a sudden so easy to traverse in that game. And I ended up liking it a lot more the second time.
Interesting.
That being said, I do still think it's one of the weaker, mainline Zelda games for sure. So I would be willing to happily put it at the top of the C tier because I think it's a line straddler, or sorry, the bottom of the C tier because I think it's a line straddler between probably C and D. So does that make sense?
That works for
do you
me.
align that? Okay,
that works for me. I'll take it.
Nick in the chat, I want to give it another try on Switch using the amiibo for fast travel. I'll wait for it to be cheap and see how Skyward is. I actually own it physically if you want to borrow it, Nick. I found it on sale one time from Best Buy for like $25, weirdly. So I picked it up then. So next time I see it, if you want to borrow it, I'll lend it to you. Next up, and actually, I do want to quickly circle back. Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, two games that neither of us have played. So if either of you have, or if any of you in the chat have played that one, and you feel like you know where it belongs in this tier list, let us know. We'll put it there, but we've not played them, so we're going to skip those. And then, so next up is A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. You played this one. What did you think of it?
I think it's a good A.
A good.
I think Link Between Worlds is a really solid handheld Zelda game.
Cool. Yeah, for me, in my original workings of this list, I had this in a B tier, but I think I agree with you. I think I look back on it and I think B was unfair. I think similar to Majora's Mask, I feel like this is one of those games where it really nailed the different thing. Where in this one, Zelda or Link being able to go 2D and like
such
get on
a
the
cool
walls,
mechanic,
really cool mechanic that they fucking nailed.
Yeah,
and the dungeons are really fun in that game, and because also that game came out a little bit before Breath of the Wild, which we'll talk about in a minute, that didn't really have the like the temple vibe that most Zelda games do. And so after playing Breath of the Wild, going back to A Link Between Worlds was nice to have that like kind of more traditional Zelda experience. So yeah, I would agree A tier for A Link Between Worlds. So that brings us to the final game that has been released, and that is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Kamen, this is one of those games where I think 95% of the internet would agree with me that this is an S tier game, but I want to hear what you think.
Okay,
what tier you think Breath of the Wild deserves?
I'm gonna give it a fair shake. D was too low. I think C is, no, I'm kidding. No, I look watching Sid play through it again and her relaying like what she really likes about the game and things that she really dislikes about the game. It's interesting because we have like diametrically opposed opinions on the things that we like and dislike. But ultimately she was just like, I don't know if I can actually beat this game, like beat it. She was like, I don't know if I can. She was like, I'm kind of like, she's getting in like an Elden Ring headspace that like I had, where she's like, I'm going to play it out of spite at this point. But like, she's like, it's just something about it. I think listening to her talk about it and kind of my own opinions and just knowing the general discussion, I think an A is when I'm looking at Zelda games, I think an A is a very respectable place for this game to be played.
Sure. Yeah. So here's my kind of thought on it. I feel like Nick in the chat makes a good point. Every game after it copied it, Breath of the Wild is definitely an S tier. There is that like Breath of the Wild kind of reached that status that like Dark Souls did, where it kind of did so much kind of differently in the open world genre, or in whatever genre, like with Dark Souls, not necessarily open world, but to where it kind of became like a verb to describe something, like it's Breath of the Wild like, or this game is very Breath of the Wild. And so there's like an iconic status to it that I think is worth respecting. But I do think that it is fundamentally a very different game than every game on this list.
Mhm.
We kind of just mentioned it briefly in that it's like the first game to really not follow a temple structure, in that it had the 120 shrines that were just like mini puzzles, which were cool, but it is something that I really did miss in this game. And I go back and I went earlier this year and played it for about 20 more hours. I like started over with the intent of finishing it again, but I eventually dropped off because I did pretty much 100% it the first time I played it. And
I
there is a
think
magic to it, but
no,
yeah, it's missing something.
I think the big thing though is I think the shrines are its biggest problem. That
Sure.
you are because they do it in Elden Ring, and I don't think anyone's really figured out how to do it the right way yet. Where they go, okay, we're gonna start you off in an area that it's gonna be tough, but you can work through it. And then you're gonna have the full map to explore, and you can do it on whatever you want to do. But you're still roped into you have to do the shrines if you want to go to some of those places. And some of those places are much more difficult than other places. Same thing with Elden Ring. Like there's parts of that map that like you just don't need to go to. You're gonna get
Sure.
your teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest issue with Breath of the Wild. And that was like one of the one things that like Sid and I both synced up on was like, you are forced to do shrines. You don't have an option. You have to. If you want to progress in the game, you have to. If you want to get the Master Sword, there's no question. And like you pretty much have to have it to be Ganon unless you're real fucking good.
Sure.
It's like you're gonna have to. So like for me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. And like 120 of those motherfuckers, and some of them are very easy. Some of them are also very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of burnout there.
There could definitely be burnout there for sure.
But and I think that's the thing. You made a good point though that Breath of the Wild is one of those games that that people started using the term like, oh, this game is Breath of the Wild like or Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild-esque, whatever. There's a game that not many people actually talk that much about that did the same thing, Patrick. The
What
game
is
is
it?
called Bulletstorm.
God damn it.
So many people after that game came out were like, any game, honestly, even Breath of the Wild when it came out was like, this game's kind of like Bulletstorm. I was like, I don't really know if I agree, but sure. Still haven't
Sure.
played it, have you, Patrick?
No, I haven't.
You fucking
And I don't
loser.
think I ever will.
You suck.
And I don't think I ever will.
It's on it's on fucking PlayStation Plus right now.
Kamen actually means Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is very Bulletstorm, and Bulletstorm is very Kingdom Hearts. It's all connected. So here's my thing. I think I'll take A. I'll take A for Breath of the Wild. I do still think it deserves to be S tier just for kind of how it, for a game that has 19 mainline entries, pretty impressive for it to come out and completely change the formula and still be so successful and what a lot of people consider the best game ever made.
Mm-hmm.
But I think kind of like what we said, like it is the most different on this list. So, and that with that comes different tastes. And so I'll settle with you and say this is A tier. So now what I want,
this, Patrick, I'll tell you this.
Tell me.
When we rank them, I'll make sure that it's the number one in the A tier.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll see. So obviously we're going to skip the haven't played because no one in chat ever chimed in. So it seems like no one has ever played any of those 5 games. So we're just going to keep them there. D, stuck with the Adventure of Link Zelda 2 because there's no other game to compare it to. So C tier, we got Minish Cap, the original The Legend of Zelda, and The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I actually feel like the only thing I would maybe consider is switching Skyward Sword and 1. Mm-hmm. Oh, can I not do that? There we go. What do you think?
I think that's a solid C tier, yeah.
Okay. And then so B tier, we got Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons, The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, and Twilight Princess.
Honestly, I think that could remain in that exact order and be just fine. Because I still think Link's Awakening needs to be an A tier, but since it's not,
I'm happy with Link's Awakening being top of the B tier. I do think that I would maybe switch these two, and put Twilight above 4 Swords because it has that like more full feeling to it, and that little wolf is just so cute. Sure. A tier, Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, and A Link Between Worlds. I think it's fair to have Breath of the Wild number 1 in the A tier. What do you think? Do you think these are right where they are? Or do you think you flip them?
No, I think they're perfect. Yeah.
Cool. I dig it. And then, so that brings us to S tier, Ocarina, Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker. My personal ranking would go Wind Waker, Majora, Ocarina. What would yours be?
Mine would be Majora, Ocarina, Wind Waker. So
that puts Majora
stuck.
was highest for both of us.
I could, you know what? I could say if we're coming down to that point, I would say Ocarina being 3 in the S tier is totally okay too.
I'm fine with keeping it at 2. That's okay.
Majora is just the best. To me, Majora is the best Zelda game.
Yeah,
it is such an interesting thing.
I've gotten enough opportunity to force feed my love for Wind Waker into lists on this podcast before, so I will let Ocarina have the leg up this time. So there you have it, folks. We got from top to bottom: The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons, Twilight Princess, The Four Swords Adventures, The Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, The Legend of Zelda, and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, not ranking Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Triforce Heroes, Four Swords, and Oracle of
You know
Ages.
what, John? I'm just gonna say this right now. No, we're not gonna include Wand of Gamelon on anything.
The fuck is that?
Oh no, we're not gonna talk about that.
Not gonna include that. Is this a D's nuts joke?
No, it's not. However, we did miss one game that needs to go into the tier D, and it's called These Nuts.
Sure, there you
go. Okay, Wand of Gamelon would be like, if there's, can we go lower than D? Is there further tier down? It is without a doubt one of the worst fucking things you've ever seen.
Just looking at the images online, this looks fucking insane. What is this? Is this a Nintendo released game?
Yeah, it was on the CDR, I think. John might be able to help me out. It didn't come out on a Nintendo console. It was, I think it was a CDR game. It was
fucking weird.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch some videos about that. So here's my final question to close out the show.
Sure.
So we have our tiers, our tiers of the kingdom for The Legend of Zelda. If you were to guess today, right now, 10 days ahead of release, where do you think The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom ranks on this list?
I'm going to say,
do you think it can make an S tier?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be an A, and I think it's going to be behind Breath of the Wild. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's got big shoes to fill, and I think it could be better than Breath of the Wild. But it's too early to tell, I think, with all these new mechanics. But I will be shocked if it is below A tier. I will be pretty shocked.
No, yeah. I don't see that. I will say the one thing is, I think we've had this conversation where we were like, are they going to remove the shrines? The game seems much bigger, and shrines I don't think seem like it's going to be something that's in this type of world. That might actually, in my head, elevate it above Breath of the Wild. But I do think that that's a tough one.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to wait and find out. But I did want to share with the folks at home, at least in the chat, if you're listening, you're not going to see this, but Terry and I were kind of bonding in the fact that we both got this little sweet thing.
Oh, that's beautiful, dude.
So this is the Tears of the Kingdom OLED special edition. This is, for Rose, quote unquote. And so that's the dock. And
so how many Switches do you now own?
So technically right now, and those are the Joy-Cons, so pretty. Right now, we own 3. However, one for each of us, and then now we have an extra one. So we are finding the extra one a new home.
Good.
So we're not going to just own 3 Switches.
Good.
But
that's sweet of you to find it a new home.
It is, yeah, and I'm excited. I don't know if this person knows that we're giving them the Switch yet, but I hope they are happy. But that's on them. That's not on me. Kamen.
Yes, sir.
We do have one last thing to discuss, and that is a little bit of an update to the games calendar, because there are a few things I did want to mention, but we'll be quick and then we'll get the fuck out of here. Today, as we've said, Redfall on Game Pass. As of release on the 4th, a game called Ravenlock I've never heard of. I meant to delete that, but one I did want to mention on the 8th, Weird West Definitive Edition coming to Game Pass. So that's a game that I know you've been wanting to play. So it's coming to Game Pass. And then also some announcements. Forspoken, if you ever played that, is getting a little bit of DLC called Intanta. We Trust, coming May 26th. That's later this month. And then Armored Core 6 got a release date and a gameplay trailer. If you missed that, go check that out. It looks pretty cool. In a different world, we might have reacted to that during the podcast, but other things happened, and I think it was better for it. August 25th is when that game comes out. And then Oxenfree 2 got a release date coming July 12th for Switch, PS4, and 5, Steam, and Netflix. You might notice not on Xbox, originally an Xbox exclusive, not coming to Xbox again. And then also Gran Turismo and Twisted Metal both got trailers, the movie and the shows, respectively. And it's weird. They both look weird, but hey.
I'm actually quite excited for the Twisted Metal show.
Twisted Metal does look campy as fuck, and I'm ready
dig
for
that. Yeah.
Terry in the chat, Lord have mercy, I'm so happy about it. The OLED screen is so beautiful. Truly, if you are ever considering getting a Switch, if you play a lot in handheld mode, the OLED screen it's incredible. It's worth it. But Kamen, any last words before we move on and go home?
No.
Great. You can follow me at Patrick Schweig. You can follow the pod at Spot Games Pod or Spotlight Games Pod on Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. You can follow our sister podcast, Save Trash Cinema, at Save Trash Cinema on all socials. Cameron, where can I find you?
You can find me at the Dumpster Boy on Twitter.
Stinky in that dumpster. Until next week, I love you.
I love you.